Tonight on News Decoded, we uncover how a single memo signed in Washington, D.C. may have cost precious hours and lives after the catastrophic Central Texas floods. We'll follow the paper trail, track the delayed federal response, and explain what it means as a hyperactive Atlantic hurricane season bears down on the Gulf. Before we dive into the full breakdown, please take a second to subscribe, hit the like button, and share your thoughts below. Your support helps this new channel keep delivering in-depth, ad-free reporting. Right now, as dusk settles across the country and communities flip on living room lights, millions of Americans are trying to make sense of the unimaginable scenes that came out of Central Texas this past week. Longtime residents of Hays and Caldwell counties, people who remember the floods of 1998, 2002, even 2015, say they have never witnessed walls of water move that fast, swallow that many neighborhoods, and leave so little behind. Entire cul-de-sacs are just water lines on tree trunks now, and front yards look like riverbeds. First responders are still slogging through knee-deep mud, prying open overturned pickup trucks, hoping, almost begging, to find someone alive in an air pocket. Tonight, the official death toll stands at 121, with 166 Texans still unaccounted for. Every hour that number stays static, heartache grows heavier. Yet heartache is not the only feeling rising. Anger is rising too, because while neighbors were forming human chains to pull seniors through shattered windows, the federal government was effectively stuck in a holding pattern inside the Beltway. And the blame, according to career officials inside FEMA speaking to multiple outlets, traces straight back to Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem and a by-the-book directive she signed in June that makes almost no operational sense in the real world of storm response logistics. Let's unpack that. FEMA keeps pre-packed commodities, water, meals ready to eat, generators, tarps, at warehouses across the country. When a state's emergency manager sends a resource request, FEMA's regional administrator can normally greenlight those supplies within hours. The system isn't perfect, but when the policy allows bureaucrats closest to the ground to cut the red tape, trucks roll before sunup. That's how it worked after the Joplin tornado, how it worked during the early days of the Oroville Dam crisis, how it has worked for decades. This June, however, Secretary Noem issued a memo requiring her personal sign-off on any DHS contract above $100,000. That threshold might sound big if you're outfitting a coffee shop, but in disaster math, it's laughably small. One push of bottled water can top $100K. Hauling heavy urban search and rescue equipment from Virginia Task Force 1 to Texas burns through that ceiling before the trailer doors swing shut. In other words, the memo guaranteed delay. So when the Blanco and San Marcos rivers jumped their banks after 10 saturated inches of rain, Texas did what states are supposed to do. It declared an emergency and asked for federal help. State troopers barricaded highways. Volunteer fire departments launched John boats at 3 a.m., and FEMA's regional staff drafted the activation order for its elite USAR teams, firefighters, structural engineers, K-9 handlers trained to find life in collapsed structures. All they needed was the secretary's ink. They waited. And waited. 72 hours ticked by. Families kept calling missing person hotlines, cell phone batteries died across flooded counties, and daylight temperatures climbed into the mid-90s, turning stagnant pools into biohazards. While a requisition form sat on a desk inside DHS headquarters on Nebraska Avenue. What was the secretary doing? According to her own social feeds, because transparency apparently happens on Instagram these days, she spent part of that weekend asking followers which of 3 nearly identical equestrian oil portraits she should hang back in the South Dakota Capitol. Same black stallion, same sunset palette, same $50K watch peeking from beneath a fringed gauntlet glove. The algorithm loved it. The comment section filled with heart eye emojis. Somewhere between those likes, 72 golden hours for finding flood survivors drained away. If the Secretary's defenders think this is an isolated mishap, recall the pattern. This is the same cabinet official who posed in a borrowed firefighter's Nomex coat on an Alaska runway, who donned a flak vest beside an ice bear cat to film a TikTok about protecting the homeland, who allowed press photographers into El Salvador's Tecoluca mega prison and smirked in front of detainees shackled in rows. American emergency management used to be full of unsung public servants. Think of Craig Fugate in a rumpled FEMA windbreaker, or Admiral Thad Allen stomping New Orleans levees after Katrina. These were people who hated the limelight because the spotlight wastes seconds. Today, DHS resembles a one-woman influencer brand. More ring light than lightning round?
Now, let's talk numbers. FEMA's annual disaster relief fund hovers around $37 billion. The idea that every contract above $100K must route through the secretary's personal inbox is absurd on its face. It creates a queue hundreds of invoices long during a normal month, let alone in hurricane season. According to internal scheduling emails leaked to vetted reporters, the secretary's staff told subordinates reviews may require up to 5 business days. In flood response, 5 days is the difference between a clean pillowcase in a shelter and a bacterial infection, between a generator humming at a dialysis clinic and a 911 call that never gets answered, between life and death. Senator Andy Kim of New Jersey grasped that danger immediately. In his letter demanding the hurricane season contingency plan, he did the math out loud. If DHS takes 5 days per obligation and a major hurricane triggers hundreds of obligations, the pipeline seizes up. Money is only as good as the moment you can spend it. Delayed dollars equal empty helibases, unfueled high-water vehicles, and rescue swimmers sitting on the tarmac while currents sweep away minivans. Let's linger on that climate context. NOAA projects up to 19 named storms this Atlantic season. 5 could hit Category 3 or higher. Ocean heat content in the Gulf right now rivals the summer of 2020, the year Laura exploded from tropical storm to Cat 4 in 36 hours. Meanwhile, FEMA is operating with an acting administrator who, in Senate testimony, could not produce the official hurricane season start date. He wasn't joking. That kind of leadership vacuum is how vulnerable coastal counties wake up to a red zone on the Doppler and realize too late that the cavalry is still waiting for someone in Washington to hit approve on a fuel contract. Even more galling, Secretary Noem this week quietly nixed a $3 million research grant aimed at modernizing tornado and flash flood alert systems. Exactly the technology Texas counties needed last Friday night when cell phone towers overloaded and siren networks failed. She justified the cancellation by citing duplication of efforts. Yet days earlier she told a press gaggle our outdated warning infrastructure puts families at risk. That cognitive dissonance signals a department run on photo ops, not policy. Let's zoom out to the constitutional stake here. Since 1988, the Stafford Act has framed federal disaster assistance as a partnership. States request, FEMA supplements. The premise is simple. When calamity overwhelms local capacity, a nation of 330 million shares the burden. That principle rebuilt the Jersey Shore boardwalk, airdropped hay to Nebraska cattle during the 2019 bomb cyclone, and paid funeral expenses for thousands of COVID victims. Now, a DHS secretary handpicked by a president who openly muses about abolishing FEMA signals a pivot. Disaster response as states-only turf. If you're not a mega-state with its own urban search and rescue cache, good luck. Americans hearing that rhetoric might recall another laissez-faire slogan, "Heck of a job, Brownie." That phrase immortalized FEMA mismanagement after Katrina. It taught a generation of emergency managers that optics can kill. Yet here we are again, with the Oval Office praising a Homeland Secretary because she was first person on TV. Visibility has replaced capability as the gold star of public service. Consider the grassroots reality. Volunteer fire halls from San Marcos to Lockhart have been serving brisket plates around the clock to evacuees. Local churches are ripping out moldy drywall by hand. None of them care who trends on X. They care that refrigerated trucks aren't idling behind traffic cones waiting for a federal courier bag. They care that an 8-year-old named Sofia Velasquez is still on the missing list because swift water teams launched a day too late to fight the current under I-35. They care that a grieving dad in Martindale has asked every trooper he sees why national assets were stuck in paperwork hell. Policy choices ripple outward. Freeze a $100 K contract, and a portable cell tower meant for Luling Intermediate School never ships. Block a flash flood sensor grant, and sirens in Kyle stay silent. Endlessly photobomb your own disaster scenes, and the next county judge might decide Washington, D.C. is a mirage and skip filing the mutual aid request altogether. Is this sustainable? No. Disasters are growing nastier and pricier. Look at NOAA's billion-dollar event chart. It spikes like a ski jump these past 10 years. Integrated federal-state response isn't optional. It's the fire break between chaos and recovery. So the question before Congress, governors, and frankly voters is stark. Will we allow a vanity-driven bottleneck to kneecap the only agency chartered to help every county, red or blue, when the sky falls? Career staff inside FEMA, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, are reportedly demoralized. Some talk about dusting off resumes, heading to private sector resilience firms, because they can't square a rescue ethos with an approval chain designed for social media latency. When mission-first professionals walk, rebuilding that institutional muscle takes years. Katrina taught us that. Maria taught Puerto Rico that. Paradise, California learned it when federal forestry crews arrived with outdated maps. Yet it is not too late to course correct. The memo could be rescinded tonight with a signature. No spin, no selfie, just ink. Congress could codify spending cap exemptions for life-saving missions. The White House could nominate a FEMA administrator who has actually worked an EOC during a wind event. And voters, Texans now, Jerseyites come September, coast dwellers from Brownsville to Bar Harbor, could demand from any candidate a pledge: never again trade real-time readiness for brand-building optics. Until then, local responders will keep trudging through the muck under mildewed skies, doing what they've always done, because disasters don't wait for bureaucracy to catch up. They don't pause for curated posts or horse portrait polls. Water rises, levees break, people cling to rooftops. Government either shows up with boats and blankets, or it doesn't. Tonight, too many Central Texas families know what happens when it doesn't. And that, my friends, is the haunting lesson of this flood, one that no number of cinematic Instagram reels can edit away. If you found this analysis helpful, please subscribe, give the video a like, and tell us in the comments how you think disaster response should be reformed. Your engagement fuels our independent reporting, and we'll be back soon with more stories decoded and delivered straight to you.